Hi, everybody. It's Dee from Fire Within Coaching. Welcome to another episode of What Lights Your Fire. Jenn Rivera, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy that you're here. I've known you for a while, and to see you in this space is pretty phenomenal because you're pretty good at what you do. So why don't you go ahead and tell people what lights your fire?
Productivity, leadership, communication. I think communication is the heart of what sets my soul on fire.
I love it.
Yeah, I think that's what gets me is communication. And I think it actually stemmed from being so bad at it and
I hear you.
having to keep it together.
So what was it that you improved from being a bad communicator? How did you take those steps to improve?
I I think I improved a lot. I think I was really good at relationship building and identifying the relationships that would be really helpful for me. But I was really bad at maintaining the relationships because I can be quite direct, which can be very offensive to people. And oftentimes I don't realize that I'm being so direct. And I don't realize that it's hurting someone's feelings because in my mind, what I'm saying is like, it's not personal or it's not an attack on them, but the way that I say it feels like that.
And that's an assertive person problem. It really is. Because I myself, I can relate to that of being an okay communicator, but for myself, it was I would identify those meaningful relationships and then I wouldn't know how to maintain it like yourself. So one way of maintaining that is to stay in your lane. Now, what does that mean? Because I will tell you, when we originally said this is what we're going to talk about, I was like, because you have that, it has a bad rep.
Yeah, it does have a bad rep. So staying in your lane, it can be very dismissive. It's definitely a way to shut people down, especially if they're sharing an opinion or something helpful. And so the history of it actually is way back, And while people don't know the exact history, they think that it came from American roots. So in the 1930s, like cars and trucks became the number one form of transportation, right? And so staying in your lane was literal, stay in your lane, right? And it was this, I'm frustrated with you, stay in your lane. And then it was sports, right? Football, I'm going directly for that. I am covering this person. And so that is the only lane that I'm in. I'm not getting distracted by other people and what's happening until I take care of what's right in front of me first. And then I can deal with what's happening elsewhere. Modern slang has changed it and turned it into mind your business, right?
Yeah. Yep.
But I think that if you can internalize that and change in your mind that dismissiveness to focus, then it changes everything. It makes it your own. And there's other ways that we talk about it, right? Not my monkey, not my circus. This isn't my problem. It's not my lawn to mow. That's all the same thing, which is I need to stay focused. So if you stick to your zone of genius, right? In other words, like if you're not engaging in things that aren't productive, that aren't your passion, that aren't directly affecting you or contributing or something that you're not passionate about, if you stay away from those things and focus on what you're good at, what's affecting your job or your projects, what you're passionate about, then you're going to be more productive, you're going to be happier, and you're going to get more done.
And who doesn't want that?
Who doesn't want that?
Right. Yeah. And I think you're right. It's the communication is a big part of this because we automatically, especially if it's someone we don't like, it's negative. And if someone is saying that to us or any form of that, we're automatically thinking negative. Oh, this person's always direct, so this is not good. But that
yeah, I definitely wouldn't say that to someone. I take that back. I would say it in a coaching environment and like a consult, because I'm a consultant, a business consultant. So I would say that if I was consulting with somebody, if they were frustrated about something, like I have one person that I talk to often, and everything that has to do with this person or not frustrates the crap out of her. And I'm like, we need to give you better tunnel vision, right?
Yes.
Because there is some value to that. And it might be, like you said, if somebody's frustrating you and you're like, stay in your lane, maybe that's somebody that's encroaching in her space. But most of the time, the fact that she has so many opinions and thoughts on everything that's going on around her, it's distracting her from her own lane, from what she needs to do. And it's demoralizing her and it's lowering her productivity because she's frustrated. And that fatigue of engaging in everything else will reduce the quality of work that you have and what's under your purview.
And oh my gosh, I can so feel that. It definitely work culture is something that I'm very passionate about, and making sure that it's just friendly and there's psychological safety and stuff like that. But it's so deeply ingrained, just the old way of doing work and saying things that are rude, but maybe a little rude, or saying it in a rude way. So learning that communication of how to turn that rudeness, which is of course perceptive, but that rudeness into productivity. So that's pretty huge.
Sure.
That you do that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think communication is a foundation of relationship building. Ultimately, it creates better communication, creates better business. That's my thing when it comes to my business. It's kind of my tagline, better relationships, better business. And I think that goes in literally any direction. So it could be coworker to coworker, it could be coworker to supervisor, it could be supervisor to employee, it could be it's everything. It's from C-suite broadcasted to the entire business. It goes from your employee to your target audience, to your customers, to your clients, to your vendors, to your partners, to the community at large. So communication is the foundation of the relationship that you have and the culture that you have in your business.
Right.
And ultimately the sales that you can make in your business.
Right. Because if your people aren't happy and they don't feel like they can speak up or they can have honest conversations, they're setting themselves up for failure already. Because I personally wouldn't want to shop somewhere that's miserable, right? I want to go to places that I can see joy on other people, and people want to be there, which is it's difficult, especially coming off of a pandemic. But I think it's necessary to look at it from that perspective of just happiness and just joy and doing things that make you joyful.
I think you stick to your zone of genius and you create that, right? So your zone of genius, which is from the book The Big Leap, right? There's 4 different zones according to that framework: your zone of genius, your zone of excellence, competence, and then incompetence, right? And you want to stick to your zone of genius because that's what you love doing, that's what you're great at, that's where you're contributing the most, and it makes you happy. So there's a vibe, right? And if everybody is doing what is within their zone of genius, that vibe creates a synergy there. So work culture. And then outside of that, like you said, you can feel the vibe as a consumer, whether it's business to business or business to consumer, whoever your target audience is, feel that, right? In another way, so Michael Hyatt's way, his framework is his zones. So there's a desire zone, which is same thing. Like, what are you best at? What are you most proficient at? What do you love doing? How are you contributing? But then the other zones are like the disinterest zone, the drudgery zone, distraction zone. And then inside of that, there's a development zone where you can continue to develop and move things from one zone to another if you want to. And that's all based on passion and proficiency, which is a big deal when we're talking about people staying happy or doing what they love and being really good at it.
And I love it. So going back to the stay in your lane. So tell us a little bit more about that. And you also made a guide to help people. Tell us a little bit about it. Your genius, your zone of genius. Tell us about it.
I think it's important to understand so the guide is actually about how to say no to your clients. So for anybody who's working as an account manager or who is doing project management for accounts or has their own business, it's about saying no to clients, and not necessarily saying no to everything, but saying no to the things that you should say no to. And I think that it's important for everybody to understand what their limits are, and self-awareness is so key in that. You need to know what you're good at, what you like doing, and what you don't ever want to do, what you're miserable at, and that makes you not fun to be around. So from a client perspective, your products and your services should all rotate around your zone of genius, that desire zone that we talked about earlier, right? And if your client is asking you to do something outside of that, then your answer should be no. So for example, if I am a fantastic graphic designer and I just love graphic design, I'm really good at it, and a client says, oh my gosh, I want you to create this flyer for me. And then after that, I want to create, this email funnel to drive people from the flyer to sign up for emails. And then I need a drip campaign. Can you do the copywriting for that? Hell no. You're not doing the copywriting. You can make it look pretty, but you're not doing the copywriting. Why? Because you don't like copywriting. Maybe you might even be a little bit good at it. It might be something that you are proficient at, but you hate. Or maybe you're not even that proficient at it, but we stay in our zone of genius. And so then the idea at that point is to say, thank you so much, client, for the opportunity to take on this project. I would love to do the flyer, but when it comes to the drip campaign for the emails, that's not something that I offer. Can I recommend these other people who are great at that for you? And you move on, right? And so oftentimes we get stuck in hamster wheels where we want to do everything for our clients all the time or our customers, right? And so I want to do this and I want to do that. I'm going to do whatever I can for you. And that's not always the right answer. Sometimes you just have to say, and that's okay. And it's you internally staying in your lane. This isn't my lane. I can't get into that lane. Now, if it's something that you are good at and you just don't offer it as a service or product, then heck yeah, engage and see if it's something that you want to do. If you can make money off of it, or if you can service your accounts, awesome, go for it. But if not, love ya, mean it, no thanks.
Bye. I agree. It's funny because I actually had that happen to me when I was first starting out. I had put ghostwriting as one of my services because at that point I didn't know what it was that I was giving out. So I was like, all right, ghostwriting, I know I can do that. And they had come to me, they gave me the project, and I was like, oh, maybe not. Because it was big and it was something that like at that point, like now I think I'd be more comfortable and stuff doing something like that. But then I was like I felt this pain right here and like my knots in my stomach. So I'm like, it's probably something I don't want to do then. So then I went ghostwriting. I'm like, no, not doing it anymore.
I'm out. Yeah. And there's a reason why we talked about what staying in your lane is, but why we stay in our lane is because we get distracted and we become ineffective. And then that leads to inefficiency. Then we get frustrated, then we get overwhelmed, and ultimately it's negativity and burnout, right? Nobody wants that. Not you, not your client, not your coworkers, not your boss. Nobody wants that. And so it becomes something that starts to weigh on you. And then personally, it starts to negatively affect your home life and your relationships. And so when I say stay in your lane, what I'm saying is stick to your thing. Be the most successful and passionate version of yourself that you can be. That's what staying in your lane is.
There you go. There's no negativity to that. And that's why I love just reframing, because you pretty much what you did was you just reframed it and you looked at it from a positive rather than a negative. And I definitely just from the outside, I'm like, wow, I feel much more comfortable if that was explained to me. It's not about you not stepping on other people's toes. It's about you doing what you do best and sticking to it.
Yes. Have you heard of Clifton Strength?
The what?
Strength Finders, the book.
Oh, yeah.
Have you heard of the book Strength Finders about Clifton Strengths? Okay. The team who created that, the father of this entire framework, is Donald O'Clifton, which is why they renamed it the Clifton Strengths. So if you're not familiar with who he is, he's the one who led the study around creating these strengths. He had a research firm that eventually acquired Gallup. So now Gallup, a global research firm and workplace consulting firm. Anyway, and that's just the weight of this. Dr. Clifton said, if your senses are numbed with delusion and denial, you will stop looking for these true strengths and wind up living a second-rate version of someone else's life rather than a world-class version of your own. So
I want you to say that one more time, just because of how important that is. Say that one more time.
Sure. If your senses are numbed with delusion and denial, you'll stop looking for these true strengths and wind up living a second-rate version of someone else's life rather than a world-class version of your own. So Tom Rath, who was on his team as well, and he's the one who wrote the Strength Finders book, he said, you cannot be anything you want to be. You can't. but you can be a whole lot more of who you already are. So leveraging your strengths, your passion, that zone of genius, that's the way to go. And he also said the key to human development is building on who you already are. And so you get better and you get to live a world-class version of yourself. And then you get to be who you are rather than faking it, right? Which puts a whole lot of stress on everybody. And then that human development creates the relationships around you that you need to succeed at work, at home, at life. Do you know what I mean?
Right,
so keeping your lane, leveraging your strengths, that is not talked about enough and should be a focus in your life every day.
Absolutely. And I found this on my shelf. I was like, I know I have it. So this is
I have it here too.
Yeah, I'm like, I have that one, and then I have this one. Is this the Strength Quest? Yes. So this is the same one. And I have a few other ones. But yes, absolutely. If you know a little bit about everything, then you're a master of none. What's that quote?
So it's a jack of all trades is a master of none, but nobody finishes the rest of it. So the rest of it is, but oftentimes better than a master of one. So I have mixed feelings about it. So because I would consider myself a jack of all trades. I know just enough to be dangerous, but I don't offer services and products that have to do with everything I know a little bit about. I know just enough to guide my clients in the right direction to an expert. So I'll give you an example, a jack of all trades. I don't do SEO. I don't.
Okay.
I know just enough to know whether or not my clients are with somebody who knows what they're doing. That's it. Okay. And so I had a client who was paying just exorbitant amounts of money for an SEO person to update their Google My Business. And it was like thousands of dollars a month. It was bad.
Yeah.
And that was all the SEO that they were doing was just every week they would update a few different locations, Google My Business, which I could pay a high schooler to do. They were drawing from blogs that were being written by somebody else on the team of the business. This SEO company was coming in, taking that content and then just putting it on their Google My Business like profile. And it was like they were spending so much money and I was like, this is a racket. And I reached out to, I have a fantastic website agency that I work with. They're a vendor that I have used for my own, but also a vendor that my client used. And then I work with them on stuff with them. So it's a very symbiotic relationship. I called him immediately and I was like, does this sound crazy? Is it just me? And he was all fired up because he was like, what a scam.
Yes.
I know just enough to protect my client. And then I direct them to where they need to go.
I love that. Just enough to protect your client and then you refer them out, guide them out. But it's also to people that you know that you're sending them to, if you can.
People that I trust. So, and if I have never done business with them, but they were recommended, then I will say that to my clients. So I don't want to label anything. I don't pretend. If I've worked with them, I will say so. And I will say, hey, I'll vouch for them. Or even if I worked for somebody who's not even fantastic, but that's what they can afford. Then we'll have that conversation too. Hey, this is a good option for where you're at in your budget. Get to a different place. I might recommend somebody else. But that's why it's so important to build up your referral network, right? So you want to be able to refer your clients to the right people. Absolutely. So I'm constantly trying to grow my network and make sure that I have the right people because I'm not a warm body kind of person. It's not, you're not just referring somebody to somebody who says that they do that, right? It has to be somebody who you think is skilled in it. That's part of me staying in my, I will not offer, and I did it in the beginning. In the beginning, I offered services that I should not have offered too. And it was just because I was trying to help my clients save money, which is another death trap. So don't get into it. It is true. I was trying to help them save money. I knew I was like not fantastic at it, but I was like, hey, we can put it together. I probably set my clients back a year, 2 years by trying to help them do copywriting. Listen, I can't write like that. I can't build. And there are certain things that I can do and there are certain things that I can't do. And I was just, and I'll tell you what, it was hard to wean some of those clients off of the services that I offered them and that I was doing for them because they wanted me to keep doing it.
They trusted you.
Yeah. And so in that guide, I actually have some templates for how to If you guys need to say no to clients more, if you're on that hamster wheel, there's a couple of templates in there on how to use to, when your clients ask you to do things that you don't want to do and aren't good at. So that's really important. And I call it the lost art of staying in your lane, because I do feel like it's a lost art, and like it's important to implement some strategies to stay in your lane. And for me, building templates out and coming up with information to provide like referrals was some of those strategies.
Yeah. And I love that, because I feel like a lot of people don't even know what their lane is.
Okay.
Yeah, there we go. So a lot of people don't, that I have spoken to, like some of the clients that I've worked with, they didn't really know what it was that they were looking for. They're at work and it's just not clicking. There's no fulfillment. You can just be in the wrong job. And that's because you don't know yourself. And that's why that self-awareness is so important.
So I'm really big on doing a lot of those like personality and decision tests. So like Colby A, I did because my business coach recommended it. So I had done the Colby A, and then obviously Strength Finders is a big one. So recommend that. I also recommend like engaging resources that talk about these things and help you walk you through some things, right? So one of the tips actually for staying in your lane that I have is to focus on your strengths. And so in this regard, you would have to stop and consider what those strengths are. I definitely recommend Strength Finders. There's also in the guide, I actually have, so I talk about zone of genius and I talk about your desire zone. Right now, I did it in the guide too. So the big leap, which there's a link in that guide, there's a resources section, and then Free to Focus is one by Michael Hyatt, who's fabulous, like probably my favorite leader. So I'd say when you're focusing on staying in your lane, like there's some homework maybe on the front end that you have to do, some pre-work to identify what your strengths are. So I say focus on your strengths, identify your zone of genius and excellence, and document those things, write them down, and then build. If you're offering a business, if you have a business, build your services or your products around those things. If you're looking for a job, pursue jobs that focus on those things, right? If you already have a career, build your career around your strengths. And actually inside the guide, there's an exercise about how to apply your zone of genius to your work. And so there's a link there if you want to go check it out. It was in the Harvard Business Review, like a 4-step process, and it's really interesting. So I think that playing to your strengths is really important, right? But you're right. If you can't identify your strengths, then you can't play your strengths, right?
Because I think of the individual who grew up with a limited mindset. You figure 20, right? So 20 years old, people are out in the world trying to figure out what they do, and then they follow their parents and what their parents wanted them to do. So then they're caught in their parents' life. So they don't know what it is that their life is because they've never experienced it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so important. So self-awareness, I think it's so important. I think that self-awareness is a foundation of any kind of leadership.
I agree.
And self-awareness is something that's not focused on enough either, or a lot of internal self-awareness, especially right now, is trending. That self-care, what do you need kind of thing.
Right.
The external self-awareness isn't. And part of external self-awareness is knowing your strengths and your weaknesses. You should know that internally, but external is how do I engage people outside of myself knowing that information. So
I like that.
Super important. If you're running a business, if you're a rising star, I call them, if you're trying to climb that corporate ladder, if you're a manager, a leader in any way, shape, or form, yeah, that self-awareness is really important. And the second tip that I have for staying in your lane is learn to say no to the things outside of your zone of genius. But how do you do that if you don't know what your zone of genius is?
Yeah. Yep. So again, like you said, that foundation, self-awareness, because without it, you're living like this. And with it, the blinders are off, and you can actually figure out how to apply that to their situations. Because I think that's where like the social anxiety comes in as well. Because if you're not used to doing something and you're trying something new or whatever, of course you have the self-sabotage that comes in, you have imposter syndrome. So there's so many different like layers of it, but you have to strip it down all the way to the bottom. And really, for me, I think the hardest things that my clients have are separating themselves from what they really believe, because some of them don't even know what it is that they believe, right? Because they grew up with one mindset, and then the world's different now.
Right. Yeah, it's true. And I also feel like there's some quote out there or something like that says something about like a fish will always think it's stupid because it can't climb or something like that. Right.
Yes.
So same thing, staying in your lane. Like, what are your strengths? Right. So part of that negative self-talk comes from maybe I wasn't doing something right or I didn't feel good enough, but maybe it's because you were trying to climb and you were a fish and you should have been swimming.
Yes.
So all of that is part of understanding yourself better
Right.
and then leveraging the strengths that you have. Gary Vaynerchuk talks about it all the time too. What are you good at? He doesn't focus on any of his weaknesses, right? He focuses on his strengths. And that's not to say that you can't move things that you're not so good at into becoming things that you are good at.
Of course.
But there needs to be a balance, right? I'm never going to be in the WNBA. I'm 5'1". Okay. I'm not doing tricks. I'm not doing basketball. I'm not trying to do that. I'm never going to be a ballerina. I like cheeseburgers too much, right? Like I don't have the commitment that it takes to become a ballerina, to be that fit.
A lot of self-discipline.
Then, do you know what I mean? I really like to sleep. I'm not getting up in the morning and practicing, right? So that doesn't mean that I'm not good at what I'm good at. It just means that that's not my thing. But what I might want to do is maybe not be a ballerina, but maybe I want to start like exercising 3 times a week. That doesn't mean that I be fitter or more healthy with what I eat. I wanted to start changing some of my habits. So how we identify and look at ourselves is really important in understanding reality versus not reality, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Yes, you're speaking so much truth.
Stop punishing yourself for stuff.
Were you ever a self-punisher?
No, I think so. From a really young age, my dad had us in a lot of extracurricular activities and a lot of leadership opportunities. And so I think that I was just an overachiever. I've always been a high achiever, but I wasn't upset with myself if I didn't achieve. I was just like, damn, like that really sucks. And then it would motivate me more.
Yeah.
But I think I was a workaholic for a really long time. I was just constantly pushing, and I'm not anymore. So I didn't punish myself. I do see a lot of people that have really negative self-talk about things that they can't control or things because they can't do everything, right? And that's okay. You don't have to do everything. You just do what you do and do it well and chase that.
And there's no one else like you in the world. So whatever you have to offer is going to be unique right there, because you're going to offer it in your own take in how you see it. So that's I was on a call with some other entrepreneurs, and they're like, what sets your services aside? And my services, not a lot of people do a lot of my services because of what it deals with. But my answer was me. That's what sets me aside, me. And of course, that's not like the corporate answer, but it's true. That's what sets you aside, is the way that you're going to do it. You and I can offer the same exact services, but we're two very different people. So having that comparison out of it helps as well. Because I know, like, I would compare myself to people that were doing it for 10, 20 years. And I've only been a business owner since August.
Right. Everybody does things differently. And I think that's important. I work with a lot of people, and I know for me, I don't work well with people who are very sensitive because I say things and I'm unintentionally, I can offend someone. I don't mean to, but when I say something, people might take it personally, like I'm saying something about them, and I might be saying something about it's something that's super benign in my eyes that has nothing to do with them. And it's just, hey, I observed this happening this one time. And they're like, oh my gosh, you think I'm a piece of and I'm like,
no, I don't.
Oh, but I also think that people struggle with taking things someone else's opinion becomes the value that they place on themselves, which should never happen, right?
No,
So like
it does.
if
Wow.
somebody says, "Hey, Jen, you effed this up," like, damn, like crap, let me look at that. And
Yeah.
maybe I effed it up, right? First of all, I am human, and if I F something up, it's okay.
It's
Do you know
okay.
what I mean?
Yeah.
I am,
Yeah.
I personally am not performing brain surgery on people or open heart surgery on people. Whatever I did is not going to kill someone. It's
Right.
not going to change the world because I wrote the wrong word or
Right.
misspelled something on a PowerPoint, right?
Yes.
Is it embarrassing a little bit? Yeah.
A little bit.
Especially for someone like product about things like that. Like I
Right.
saw stuff in the guide that I was like, oh, I need to fix that. But people take those little mistakes and they make them into mountains instead of the little molehills that they are.
Yes.
And so somebody can say something to me and be like, you know what? Like I'm pissed because of this or this. And I'm like, damn. And I'll own what's mine of that. I'll just
Right.
carry whatever my responsibility from the
Right.
interaction. That's
Right.
on me. And I can carry that. And
Exactly.
but I'm also not responsible for the reaction of other people and how heavy
Right.
it becomes, or do you know what I mean? I'm not responsible for how someone else feels. You have to balance those things out. If somebody messed up, it's fine. I messed up.
Exactly. And that's how you learn is you fail and then you learn from it and you do it again and do it until you don't fail. And I think that we just get
It's
caught up in
really
a
hard.
society saying, no, you can't fail. I don't generally do things right the first time. Like I need the first time is just let me just do a brain dump, and then I'll fix it and make it pretty and do whatever I need. But it's very irrational to think that I'm going to do the right thing every single time. And it took me a long time to realize that because I was like, I have to do everything
So,
right, but it was causing more
yeah.
anxiety.
Yeah. And some people say, okay, so Seth Godin just says to ship it. That's his phrase, ship
Yeah.
it. So you might have a product and it might be imperfect. It's not 100%. Ship
Right.
it anyway. And then make another iteration and then ship that. But perfection is what stops people from being productive or progress, right? So
100%.
just ship it. And I say land somewhere. You have to land somewhere. It doesn't have to be perfect, but land somewhere and stop moving
Right.
so that you can get it done.
Right.
Be done with it for a second and come back. I'm definitely not somebody, and I'm a perfectionist. So I like when things are 100%. Like I made that guide and there's already something on the cover page that I want to fix, right? That I went in and fixed later. But it's out, it's productive. It'll help people and I can
Yeah.
fix that and update it in 10 minutes. Do you know what I mean? Getting it out and getting it done is the big thing. So there's a balance for me on the Pareto principle. Is it 80%? Ship it.
Yeah.
If it's 80%, it's fine. You need to take your ego out of it, come back to it later and get it to that 100%.
Exactly. And also take feedback from other people. And it's okay to have feedback from other people. If I looked in here, which by the way, there's nothing wrong with it. From my perspective, there's nothing wrong with it. It looks beautiful. But if I were to, Jen, I saw the word just say no, shouldn't have had this or whatever. Some people would take that as, well, why are you looking at my stuff? Or, why do you feel that you can come to me like this and get very offensive? But feedback is how we learn that we need to change things, because when you put this on here, this is just from you. This is from your brain. This is how you see it. Someone else might come in there and say, what if you did this and improve it? And if you are not going to be receptive to that, then think about what you could be missing out on.
And think about it. So this guide is just for saying no to clients, but there's other things that you should be saying no to too. Other people you should be saying no to. So this is even just one sliver of the entirety of staying in your lane. And then you go from there. It's really important to understand the core of what we're trying to say. What we're trying to say is do the shit you love.
Yes.
Do the shit you're good at. You know what I mean? Do the things that make you happy, that
Yes.
you're really good at, and that other people would kill to be able to do with you. I know without ego and this, like there are things that I am really good at that most people aren't good at. And there are things that I am really bad at that other people
Right.
are probably really good at.
That's human.
There's nothing wrong with that.
No.
There's nothing wrong. Do what makes you happy, what you're good at, and then be the friggin' best at it that you can. And then go make money for your company, make money for yourself, just money, be happy, and then go live your life. Get debt free and travel. This is my TED talk. Yeah. Like this is my
seriously. I mean, it's true. I left
there's
corporate and I'm like, now I can actually, as a business owner, like I can travel, I can go to other countries, I can go wherever and actually breathe in the world and still do what I love. And I wouldn't have ever done that if I couldn't do that if I stayed in corporate because it's just not an option.
That's because in corporate, some of these conversations should be happening and they're not. Self-awareness, staying in your lane. Like leaders have an entirely different perspective, right? Because they have a pretty wide purview. And so in the work life, you can say in your own world, I'm not talking about when you're having conversations with other people, but my guess is if you're listening to this, if you're watching this and you're in a corporate setting, there are things that happen outside of your department or outside of your own specific role that piss you off, right? That you are upset about, you are frustrated, right? But maybe if you're not a leader in the organization, like this is just your lane.
Right.
And those, if they don't, even if they frustrate you, if they don't directly impact your specific job, stop worrying about them.
Right.
Stay in this zone of genius, right? If you are in any position that focuses on your strengths and just kick ass, right?
Yeah.
And then as a leader, there's a different level because they have such a much wider purview. And so they shouldn't be asking people to leave their zone of genius. They should be paying the right people to cover like the weaknesses in other parts of their team, right? So you should be hiring people to do the copywriting because your graphic designer doesn't do it.
Exactly.
So stop asking your graphic designer to do your copywriting, right? You should be planning and preparing and giving your team the time to do the same to accomplish what they're supposed to accomplish. So if you're that leader, you're that manager in the business, constantly last minute ask your team to do something at Friday at 3:30 in the afternoon, or constantly puts a rush on everything, you're pissing your team off. 100%. You're not giving them the opportunity to do what they do best.
Yeah.
You're not giving them the time to do it. And now you're killing your morale in your department. But what the hell are you doing as a leader? Get your shit together.
Right.
Yeah, corporate needs to be having conversations.
Absolutely. I agree. Because I feel like if we could all honestly be more assertive in the workplace as well and take the feelings out of it. Like for you, you're an assertive person. So if you were working with me, that'd be something that you would tell me, right? I'm an assertive person. I'm not going to offend you purposely. So I'm just here to help you, and you build that trust in that relationship, then it's going to be okay. But if you don't, as a leader, if you don't build that relationship with your people and you don't get to know them and get to know their strengths, you're just going to drown. Like it's just not going to work. You have to know your people and you have to know their strengths and you have to hire the right people and put them in the right
and that's why communication is so important, right?
Yeah.
Yep, I agree. I just think that communication, self-awareness, understanding the strengths of your team, leveraging them to it is just so important in any business, right? This should be priority for leadership because the culture will carry the company. And so if you have a shitty company, you're not going to go far. If the culture is shitty, your company's not going to go. And then if it's great, chances are you're going to go a lot further with them.
And know your people enough to know that, hey, this is a problem. And for me, that's where that psychological safety comes in, because if you're a leader and they don't trust you, they're not going to tell you they're not going to tell you the problems because they think that they're going to get in trouble or it's going to affect them in a negative way. So just like communication, self-awareness, psychological safety, I feel like it's all together in corporate. It should all be the foundation right there.
Yeah. A lot of people aren't focused on it, which is why we struggle the way that we do in a lot of corporate cultures. But you can only affect yourself if you're an employee. And so that's what you focus on. And you try not to focus on, like I said, if it's not directly affecting what you're producing and your mental health,
I think,
as Dee would say, if your psychological safety, if you don't feel like you're safe, like that your mental health is taking such a hit, then run for the hills because that's really important.
Yeah, no job is ever worth your mental health. And that's one thing that I had to learn growing up. I know you can relate to this, but growing up with Italian immigrants who had that work ethic of you do it, doesn't matter if it makes you miserable, you do it because you have to put food on the table. Like,
You don't talk about our problems
yeah,
or anything.
yeah, which I know that,
Therapy.
yeah,
Rub
exactly.
some dirt on it.
My dad used to say Windex. He got that from that movie, My Big Fat Greek Wedding.
That's generational, right? And it's something that I think our generation and the younger generations are breaking for sure. But
100%.
as it said, if it costs you your peace, it's too much.
It's too much.
We won't pay the price of our peace for anything or anyone.
No,
Period.
and that's the generational difference, right? Because our parents, that's what they did, right? They came over here and they worked, and it didn't matter if they felt depressed because, like you said, we don't talk about it. It's not there. And that damage carries down and carries down. So I'm very happy that millennials now and so on and so forth, a younger generation, like we're all taking that stand and saying we're not going to do it anymore because our mental health is most important. Is there anything else that you want to share?
So really quickly, I'll just talk about the tips that we sporadically went over. So focus on your strengths, right? So find out what your strengths are, identify them, document them, build your services or pursue jobs or build your career around them. So that's number one, focus on your strengths. Number two is learn to say no to things outside of your zone of genius or your desire zone as much as you can. And then number three is anticipate needs and find resources. So what are you going to need in the future that you're not good at? Find out who is good at that and who you can work with to get it done, or who your clients can work with or your customers, and make sure that you build that directory so that you can pass it along and pass along a recommendation in the event that you need it or your client needs it. And then learn just enough to be dangerous, to discuss things outside your zone of genius, or have reliable people that you can turn to. So anticipate needs and find resources is number three. And then the workbook, the guide that I created is on my website. So my website is ascenderconsulting.com. And if you do /resources, then you will find the say no to your clients, but learning why and when and how to do that. So that's important. Yeah. I'm a business consultant. I primarily focus on crushing operational barriers, building key relationships with the most important stakeholders, and then developing communication strategies that are going to achieve your business goals. So that's what I do. If you want to talk about what we've talked about today, if you want to talk about other things that will sharpen you up and in your work life or sharpen your team up for your business, then let me know and we can chat about those things. And you can check out my website at ascenderconsulting.com.
Absolutely. And I approve this message.
It is getting into political season here.
Oh Lord, that's a different podcast, girl.
This needs to be a different drink if we're going to have that conversation.
I was going to say, I only have water. Can't have that conversation right now.
That's going to be like 2 or 3 wines deep.
That's a Friday night thing. Come on. So thank you so much. This has been great.
Thank you so much.